Attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello everyone, and thanks for joining us for today's webinar where we are going to dive into connecting your field service app, specifically ServiceMax, with your ERP back office and any other app for that matter. My name is Dan Oxenberg, and I'm the Senior Director of Marketing here at Jitterbit, and I am very excited to be joined today by a whole team of experts to help me host and talk through the intricacies of field service integration. So let me quickly run through some introductions here. Joining me from the Jitterbit side is Corey Willis, one of our resident experts and our training guru. So if anyone has ever been to a Jitterbit training, you will know Corey well. Also with us is Randy Reynolds, the VP of Product Marketing from ServiceMax, one of our strategic and our favorite partners. Randy, welcome.
Thanks, Dan.
And then last, but certainly not least, is Damian Hudson, Information Systems Manager at SPP Pumps. And Damian is a mutual customer of ServiceMax and Jitterbit, and is going to give us the real scoop here today on the end user perspective using both ServiceMax and Jitterbit. So Damian, thank you for joining us.
Hello.
So today we are looking at integrating and connecting your cloud-based field service business to your back office. And in doing so, you're doing things like providing better visibility of your customers, inventory, parts, work orders, and much more, and automating business processes between the field and the back office. And then really eliminating the silos that can otherwise exist between your departments and the applications that they use every day. I'm going to start off by giving a quick overview of Jitterbit and what we're all about, and then I'll ask Randy to take us through a deeper look at some of the field service processes that integration with the back office can enable. And then we'll dive into the SPP Pumps case study with Damian, followed by a live demo of Jitterbit from Corey. And then finally, after we've gotten through all of that material, we will conclude today's session with a Q&A with the panel. So one quick note before we do get started, today's webinar will be recorded, and we will provide that recording out to everyone after the fact. And also, if you have any questions throughout the webinar, please do feel free to ask them using the box on the right side of your screen in the GoToWebinar app, and we will make sure to get them answered towards the end following the demo. So to start out, Jitterbit is the modern integration solution for today's modern architecture. You know, the business and IT landscape has really dramatically changed in the last decade, and we've seen this emergence, explosion really, of the cloud apps from the enterprise, from NetSuite to Salesforce to ServiceMax, Aptus, and many others, and that list continues to grow every day. And we also see this explosion of new endpoints and APIs that the new Internet of Things is creating, where we're expanding out from mobile and social media channels into sensors and connected devices. And still, in most cases, you have a lot of legacy technology, on-premise applications. And these are particularly common in the back office systems like SAP, Oracle, Microsoft, and other ERPs. And so what this really means is that your investment in an application is far more valuable when it's connected to other systems that you're running. And so as a ServiceMax customer, what that would mean to you is you're connecting things like accounts and products, assets, parts, and much more from the field and moving that to the back office. You're giving reps visibility to that back office information, and you're also allowing the field to update and synchronize data from their mobile devices straight into the back office accounting systems, inventory databases, and much more. And so this is the core problem that we are solving at Jitterbit. Our goal is to simplify integration and to reduce the time and costs of designing and maintaining integrations between your applications. And what that means in today's world is approaching the integration challenge with a platform that offers agility. And this is what the Jitterbit Harmony platform does. It is a single multi-tenant platform that supports all the connectivity you need to any application and lets you solve a wide array of integration challenges. So our core value proposition really is that we can solve your integration challenge faster than anyone else and at a fraction of the cost. And we've accomplished this by really focusing on trying to allow a single user in most cases, and someone who isn't a developer for their day job, to manage and maintain these integrations. And I'll get into a little more detail about how we do that in just a minute. But at a high level, we're solving a wide array of integration challenges with the Harmony platform, from straightforward data integration, where you're moving data from one system to another, to complete business process integration, where the movement of this data is actually enabling business processes like work order management to flow through your apps and to provide a complete and seamless closed-loop process between your business units. And we've done this for many customers, hundreds of customers. Jitterbit is available on a subscription basis, so this really puts the onus on us as a company to continually drive value to our customers. And so we are very proud that 98% of our customers renew their subscriptions year over year. And really one of the key values that we deliver is how quickly our customers are able to get up and running and start seeing value from that integration. Every integration is unique, but on average, we see customers deploying Jitterbit in less than 10 days. And as you can see from the logos on the screen, Jitterbit is a solution that addresses the needs of businesses of all different sizes. We serve some of the biggest names out there, like an Autodesk, Office Depot, Salesforce themselves, to mid-sized companies like SPP Pumps, Lumi, and Skullcandy. Okay, so let's transition here, and let's talk specifically about ServiceMax and field service integration. As I mentioned a minute ago, Jitterbit is all about making integration quick and easy. And we accomplish this with a powerful suite of connectors that really simplify connectivity, design, and the configuration of integration. So our connectors are wizard-based guides that take you through essentially what is a drag-and-drop process of actually connecting out to your instance of ServiceMax. And in the case of ServiceMax, because it's a Force.com app, we're actually connecting to the Salesforce API and then pulling down all the custom ServiceMax objects from your org. And from there, you can actually begin to map data between systems. So an example here at a very basic level would be connecting accounts from ServiceMax and Salesforce with the related data in your back office ERP system, like an SAP. And in this stage, you also have the ability to add powerful data transformation logic. So that if you need to alter your data on the fly, you can make sure that the data is arriving at each application in the format that that application is expecting. And then finally, once you've mapped your systems, you can then use the Jitterbit Workflow Designer to easily build complex processes that can be triggered when a change in the system is made. So for example, a work order is created out in the field. Jitterbit can actually grab that field order, that work order, and move it to the back office system and do, make all the updates that it needs to from there. So there are, of course, a number of critical business processes and data synchronizations that you can enable between ServiceMax and your ERP. And it's here where, Randy, I'd love to pull you into the conversation and talk to us a little bit more about some of these examples and maybe give us a flavor for what you see as some of the most common and valuable integrations for ServiceMax customers.
Sure, Dan, I'd be happy to do that. And I think the slide that you guys are seeing now kind of shows the the potential levels of integration that can take place between ServiceMax and a back-end ERP system. So let me point out a couple of things here. First of all, one of the things that ServiceMax is able to provide is a complete end-to-end field service solution, and that's why there are so many potential points of integration here. So whether it's contracts and install-based product management, scheduling, a whole array of capabilities around parts and inventory, RMA, reverse logistics, the integration with billing systems. One of the things that we've seen with a lot of our customers is a real dramatic increase in service-related revenue, and a lot of that is because of the direct integration that we can provide to the back office billing systems. And so I think that that's one of the things to be aware of with ServiceMax. There are a wide variety of ways that you can do this integration. And even in this diagram that shows all of the different aspects of ERP, what we find in a lot of clients is that there isn't just one ERP system. There could be multiple ERP systems. So each one of these elements of customer information, billing information, that might be in different systems. And so we're able to, with Jitterbit's data loader and connectivity options, we're able to make those connections to a variety of systems that are out there. Another thing to notice on this slide is the direction of some of the different arrows. So there's some information that is being brought in from the ERP, so we're making that connection from customer master records into account records that are in the CRM system. There's other information that's coming from ServiceMax, and we're pulling that into the ERP system. And then there are other areas where it's actually a bi-directional connection. And so all of those things can be accommodated through this level of integration. Another thing that Dan will probably touch on later is just the different ways in which we're able to integrate, whether it's through web services or ETL or batch processes. So depending upon the nature of the content that's being integrated, we can accommodate any of those different options to address, the whole variety of field service applications.
Great, thanks, Randy. Hey, quick question for you, Randy. There's obviously a lot of integration examples here. Can you tell us a little bit about maybe what do you see from the customers on the ServiceMax side as far as how they might approach this? Are they trying to solve all of these examples at once? Are they taking it one at a time? What do you see most often?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I think that what we typically see people doing is maybe at initial glance they want to boil the ocean and have some massive level of integration, but really the best practice that we see our customers doing is they're kind of taking it a step at a time, and we really try to focus on what are the core use cases in terms of what type of information do you want to have integrated, and really look at the users of this information. And we're very focused on making the field service engineers out in the field as productive as possible. And so we want to look at what is the core information that they absolutely need in order to be the most productive, and kind of take it as a step-by-step approach as opposed to trying to do everything at once.
Got it. Well, that sounds like a perfect time to transition into a specific use case. So I know Damien's been out there waiting patiently for his turn to brag about all the cool things he's accomplished with ServiceMax and Jitterbit. So Damien, I pulled up the All About SPP Pump slide here, and perhaps you could start by telling us a little bit about what SPP does, your role there, and then maybe what you were looking to accomplish when you adopted ServiceMax and Jitterbit.
Yeah, sure, Dan. Yeah, I mean, SPP pumps are a global fluid handling solutions provider. As the name says, it's mainly water pumps for different applications. So we've got a wide range of pumps that, from a high-end perspective, being the oil and gas division, so we'll sell into the oil and gas markets for fire protection on oil rigs and gas pipelines and the like. And then we have our industrial fire range, which is what we're probably most well known for around the world in terms of these are accredited fire protection pumps that will pump water to a sprinkler system in case of a fire. So you think of the London, the Gherkin building, the Shard, the Baby Shard, the Walkie Talkie building in London, Sydney Opera House. These are the sort of high-end buildings that we're putting our pumps into. In essence, a pump sits in the basement, a fire goes, the sprinkler system kicks in, and our pumps protect lives by pumping water to those sort of systems. My role at SPP as head of IT is to globally manage our infrastructure and all of our networks and ERP systems that we have installed around the world. SAP is our chosen ERP system of choice, which we've had now for about five or so years. Went live in 2009. So the challenge really from a field service perspective, from an IT angle, was really that we were on a very manual system and had been for 20 years. So really it was a paper-based system utilising fax machines and mobile phones, and in the last sort of couple of years some of this communications were done over email. But so we didn't really have any system to take that data automatic from the field service team into a system and then into the ERP. So we had a very slow system in terms of getting data back from the field service team, from an invoicing perspective, from a product perspective, from a fix perspective in terms of what they were done on site. So one of the key goals with obviously a ServiceMax implementation, which is obviously was the chosen field service tool, and Jitterbit was to get that information back from the field into ServiceMax and obviously into our ERP system. So the main challenge really, I mean, in terms of improving things was invoicing time was one of the big sort of return on investment goals that we'd set ourselves, because every night the field service engineer would be out on doing his job, and we're typically a 1 to 2 job a day field service force, globally covering all of our sort of installations globally, but run from the UK. So typically a guy would go to site with a paper form, he'd fill it in, he'd then get the customer to sign, and he'd fax that back every night. So we'd have, I don't know, hundreds of bits of paper being faxed in every night, and then it was a job of someone to re-enter that into SAP. So obviously for invoicing a job, it was at least probably 7 to 14 days, depending if it was all smooth and if the handwriting could be read and the faxes came through okay and the hours were correct. So all those sort of challenges that we had in the field service team. So obviously that's why we needed to simplify that, and obviously ServiceMax with Jitterbit was the way we went.
Great, thank you, Damien. So let me just advance the slide here. I think you were speaking to some of this already, but maybe give us a little more detail about, before we talk about the solution and the results that you saw, where you began, the systems you had, and maybe some of the issues you were looking at.
Yeah, sure. So obviously back-end system was SAP, so typically we use the customer service module of SAP for creation of sales orders in the service division and service orders. Now, sales orders were what we collect our revenue through, and service orders would collect the costs. Now that was all manually done, so a job would be created against a customer on SAP, and then that would be faxed in terms of, so it was a manual fax sent out to the field service guy or emailed saying, right, this is where you're going tomorrow or next week or wherever. So that was usually done once a week, but that would change. So we'd utilize SAP from the customer service module perspective, and in terms of getting our data out, it would be done typically over mobiles or faxes, and then in terms of managing that, we would, as the slide shows now at the moment, the reporting was all done through some through SAP, but some through Excel. We had no real tracking of engineers. We had traditionally a big what we call a T-card board on the wall, so days split by engineers, so there's a little T-card that would go in, and that's how we would track where the engineers were going and what they were doing. So the process was very, very manual and very, very paper based, basically. So it was a paper-based system, really.
Okay, so let's transition then and start talking about moving off paper to digital. Maybe give us a little more detail about what you built, and maybe speak as well to why ServiceMax and why Jitterbit. Why did you pick those two solutions to solve your challenges?
Yeah, of course. Yeah. So we started the project. We went live in the end of February this year, and so we've currently got 32 current users of ServiceMax. So I'll start with the ServiceMax angle. So we chose ServiceMax because of the ease of implementation. We chose the iPad as our tablet of choice, I suppose. So it's very easy just to download it from the App Store, obviously, and the updates obviously come through and all that. But because it runs on the Force.com platform was a big decider for us. So we're not currently a CRM user, but that was in our decision making as well, because we will be a Salesforce CRM user. But the other solutions that we'd seen out of the box didn't give us what ServiceMax could. So it was very easy to the communication, because of obviously the cloud-based model. We looked at some others which were on-premise, and we would have to support the sort of the communications out to the field the field service engineers iPads or laptops, but that's out of the box with ServiceMax. And in terms of the ease of adjusting ServiceMax to your business processes was far better than what we'd seen in the market, and it'd taken us a good 6 to 12 months to really get to ServiceMax, and we'd spoken to a lot of other field service systems, and we plumped for ServiceMax really because of that. Obviously, hand in hand with that came Jitterbit. So we looked at some other solutions, as you can see from the slide there, Pento being one of them, but they were too manual for us really. They didn't fit the bill in terms of what Jitterbit could do and how quickly we could get data flowing from ServiceMax into SAP. So I mean, we literally within probably a week of sitting in a room with the guys from Jitterbit, with the guys from ServiceMax or the ServiceMax partner and our SAP team, we were able to take data from ServiceMax, which had come back from the field service team, back into ServiceMax, into the SAP ERP, and within probably a week, not even that, within 3 days, we had data flowing between the systems. So in terms of time for implementation, it was fantastic, and we managed to get all that in really quickly in quite a tight project timeline, really.
Okay, thank you, Damien. That's great. Let me transition here and talk a little bit about the work order management process that it sounds like you guys first started with. And Randy, I'd love to pull you in here again from the ServiceMax side. And maybe you could start off by just talking through a little bit of this example, and then Damien, maybe you could add on and pile on with a little bit of real-world experience on this one as well.
Yep, sure.
Yeah, I think that this is kind of a simplified version of the slide that we showed earlier that shows the multiple connection points across all of the different aspects of ERP. So I think for work order management, it really starts with being able to synchronize with the customer information, and so you see that up front first. And it's not only all of the customer account information, but we also, for work orders to be complete, we need to know all of the details of what the installed product is, the installed base information, what the product is, where it's located, and then as well as the the customer locations, all of that information that makes up what goes into a work order. And then, as Damien was mentioning, a really key part of this is the connection back to the back-end billing system. So what's great about this capability is as the field technician is completing a particular work order, they can actually sign that work order off at the customer site and initiate that billing process automatically. So by eliminating the faxes and the paperwork that goes back to the billing organization, that speeds up the cash flow for SPP pumps and other customers that are using this type of solution.
Yeah, I mean, just to add on to there, I mean, we in technical terms, we download the customer master from SAP once a night. Obviously, so any new customers added will hit ServiceMax, and then we create a work order based in ServiceMax, whereas before we used to do that in SAP, but now obviously that drives certain things which using Jitterbit obviously does things in SAP, so it creates things in the background using obviously some workflow that we had to create in SAP as well, but in terms of creating the service order and sales order in SAP in the background, and obviously once those numbers are passed then back through Jitterbit into ServiceMax, it allows us then to dispatch jobs out to the field service team, and obviously the hours they post on their iPad automatically come back the other way as the slide suggests and go straight back into the service order in SAP ready for invoicing. So it's literally same day invoicing as opposed to 10 days, I suppose.
That sounds like a pretty good improvement to me, Damien. Why don't we transition here from, I'm sure this might be a less complicated version of what you may have drawn up before you implemented, but why don't we transition from kind of the drawing of what you wanted to accomplish to maybe some of the screenshots that show actually what some of the people at SPP are now looking at and the data they're able to see as a result of this integration?
Yes, I mean, some of the we went on the approach that we talked about earlier in terms of we didn't obviously boil the ocean. We wanted to, but we obviously took the pragmatic approach, and we put for go live, the fewer touch points, the better. So obviously we've got some dumps that come down overnight, i.e. customer master, and obviously some of the product masters come down. And then obviously in terms of back and forth integration, it's really around the service order and the sales order. So what it allowed us to do was to really identify and using some of the error checking that Jitterbit can give us. So for instance, there's certain things that people have to do, things like credit limits on customers. So if the credit limit had failed and we created a work order, that would flag up in ServiceMax reporting that hadn't been created in SAP, and that was obviously what Jitterbit was really doing for us in terms of passing that information back to ServiceMax as to why something didn't go into SAP. As you can see from the slide, things like the logos where integration had happened, we passed that information back. So for our field service coordination team that was saying, well, why potentially has that integration happened, they can see really at a glance that yes, stuff is integrated properly, and if it hadn't, why, and Jitterbit could pass that information back from SAP into ServiceMax as to why something hadn't done. And again, financial data, credit limits was one of the areas where we had to put those sort of checks in place. So moving on, obviously, the other slides that we managed to do were that, as you can see from the graphs, so top customers from sales that were pulling back through from the work orders and the value that we will place in the work order. So we take it a bit of a step further in some of the areas where some workflow drives what the service engineers do and goes back into SAP for new quotations, which creates new sales orders in SAP. So we can, at a glance from the ServiceMax panels in terms of business intelligence, it allows us to track what people are doing, what field service engineers are logged into, what work orders they've done, and what the coordination team are really doing.
All right. Thank you, Damien. It's always a pleasure to hear real-world examples, from the original pain to the solution you guys found to the actual results. I definitely want to come back to you in just a bit with some questions. I think there's a number of questions out from the audience as well that we want to get to. But before we do that, why don't we transition one last time here? I do want to give Corey the opportunity to take us through a demo. And Corey, I'm assuming you're ready to roll, and if so, I'll hand you presenter, and you can give us a quick look at actually connecting the systems that we talked about here today.
We sure can.
All right, let me just transition to you, and it's all yours.
Okay, so there's my screen. What we've got out here is just a nice little scenario that's very similar to what we've been talking about already today. And here I have a ServiceMax org, and I have a few accounts in here. And most of the time when you're dealing with a system like this, and we're also going to be working with an SAP backend system, when you're dealing with a backend ERP, most of the time that system becomes your system of record. And this is what Damien was referring to, that you would have that customer master and the product master come down overnight. Well, we have a little integration here. This is the Jitterbit Studio that you're seeing now. This is where you design integrations. It's a graphical integration designer built with a business user in mind. You don't have to be from a developer background to work in this. So let me show you how simple it is. We just have a little two-step process here that takes care of that customer master. This is something you could set up on a schedule, just let it run every night, keep this synchronized from the back-end ERP into, in this case, ServiceMax. We'll just trigger this one manually. And while that's running, we'll go take a look over here at the material synchronization. Now, this working the material master, let's go back to that. There it is. So here we're working the material master. But same thing, just a few operations here. We grab a price book ID, we grab some material lists, get the material details here and the pricing, put those into the ServiceMax platform, and then we come down and ultimately do their pricing. And so just 6 little operations here that take care of that workflow, and we'll go ahead and trigger that. And so that's simulating what would happen on a nightly basis, and we can jump back over into ServiceMax and refresh, and we see now we've brought an additional 5 accounts over from the back-end ERP. Now some people, as they move into this, they want to be able to set up where maybe their field service reps, or if they're using it for CRM aspects as well, the people who have access here into the ServiceMax or Salesforce platform can actually begin working some and using that system really as the system of record, maybe just for the accounts. And so for instance, here we'll go take a look at Good Samaritan Hospital. And this is the one that we're going to be using and actually creating a work order here in a moment. But you'll notice right now this account does not have an SAP account ID listed. But to get this, all we have to do is send this to Jitterbit. We can do it right here with the Jitterbit to SAP button. You could do this in many different ways. Ultimately, we're triggering off a real-time workflow rule that's sending an outbound message to Jitterbit. Jitterbit receives that through the API platform. We pull that in. We go into SAP, and we take this account detail, and we create a new SAP account with it. The final step of that is then we come back and we update ServiceMax so you can know that that is updated. And so we can just simply refresh here, and there we see the SAP account ID. And we can take that and actually go over into the SAP system and show you that new account that was created here. And there we see it. In SAP, Good Samaritan Hospital, a matter of seconds in real time. You could do that with a new account creation. You could do that with account maintenance. So various activities there. From there, though, we have the account set up in SAP, and let's say we want to go ahead and move into a work order. Well, you have the ServiceMax Create Work Order button right here, but we have one that we've already pre-populated a little bit here for us. Some work that needs done on our ultrasound logic machine here. And so we'll just save and create this work order. So from this point, now it would actually go out to the field service rep. Let's see here, we may have a little bit of an issue on this one. Let's see, we may just create us a new one here. Create work order, and we'll go ahead and just populate these in. Once this work order is created, that's where it's going to go to the field service rep. We're going to be able to see how that process works as well there. But let's go ahead and plug in our product here. Again, we're going to use that ultrasound, put in our contact, and this is going to be an on-site service for a repair, and we'll just do it as a purchase order. And so we'll just leave it with this and then create that work order. Okay, so there, that work order has now been created. And so now this would actually trigger for the actual service rep to be able to go out and do the work that needs to be done. Once the service rep is on site, they'll be able to go through and have access to all the detail that they need in here. Ultimately, at the end of the work, they would come in and file a work order debrief, removing those paper processes. Again, this oftentimes done simply on an iPad or some other type of tablet-based device that they can easily carry around with them and be able to put this data entry in. And so this is going to load up the debrief screen here, and we'll be able to put in what we did to correct the problem. And so it's loading in the information from the work order. We'll just simply scroll down here, and the symptom on this particular one was a fuzzy display, and we had a failed assembly of an LCD monitor. Our root cause on this, we'll say, was due to a lack of maintenance, and it was fixed by a hardware replacement. And then we can scroll on down here and begin to add in any parts that we used. And this is where, if we just type the correct information, we'll type in SAP there and pull up the SAP product list. There we go, SAP. And there are the products that we sourced over from our SAP system. So here we'll choose the 14-volt monitor power adapter here. We'll also come in here and choose a new touchscreen display. And we'll put one more. And we'll say here we also replaced the DVI cable. Once we've chosen the products, we can come up here and get our pricing, and so that'll actually pull in the standard price. In this case, we're just pulling in the standard price from SAP into our price book entry, and we have that now, so we know what our pricing is. And the last thing that we need to do up here is go ahead and change the order status from open to closed, closing out that particular work order. And when we save it, this time, instead of clicking a button to send a message over, we're doing it based upon a field update, but again, sending a real-time message back to Jitterbit. Jitterbit is picking that up and going in and creating the SAP sales order here. We can see this also in the Jitterbit Harmony Web Management Console. You can always track your activities here from any browser, any device as an administrator, and so we can come in here and just take a look. Let me switch over to my other org here, and we'll be able to see how our logging entries look here in the Web Management Console. And we'll be able to track and see the progress of that work order creation. So there we see we received the work order. We've queried in for additional details. We've created the SAP order, and we've already updated the work order with that sales order number. If we go back to the work order, we'll simply refresh here. And if we scroll down just a ways, we'll see here the SAP sales order number. And so the last thing, we'll just take that, go back into the SAP system and display the sales order over here, show you that it did in fact come over. And we'll be able to see this sales order for Good Samaritan Hospital. There it is, Good Samaritan Hospital. There's our 24-inch touchscreen, our 10-foot DVI cable, as well as our 14-volt monitor power assembly. So that's a little bit of what Jitterbit can do. Obviously, we could go into a lot more specifics. The one thing that I would encourage everybody to keep in mind when it does come to Jitterbit is that Jitterbit is a standards-based integration tool. Here we've shown ServiceMax on the Salesforce platform, and we've shown SAP. We have other connectors out there for things like NetSuite, things like the Microsoft Dynamics Suite, Oracle EBS, many different systems, but as long as your system that you're using has some way to connect, whether it's a SOAP API, REST API, backend database, flat file connectivity, if there is some way that we can connect into that system, we can use the standards-based approach to integration and perform those integration steps.
Great. Thanks, Corey. Another awesome demo as usual. Hey, I'm going to ask you to hold on to presenter just in case we have a question that we need to jump back into product. But from here, I think let's transition one final time to our Q&A session. And what I'll do here is I'm going to play moderator, and if anyone out in the audience has questions, I can see we have quite a few out there already. I will go ahead and ask the questions of our panel and try to direct the questions as best I can to the right person. And to the panelists, if anyone has answers and I haven't directed it to you, feel free to jump in. The first question we've got here, Damien, I think is directed towards you. Did SPP have, the question here is around ESB, an enterprise service bus, or an integration solution prior to this, or was this your first investment in an integration platform?
No, this was our first investment with an integration partner. So we'd looked at a couple of others, and this was our first real solution that needed integration into SAP. So no, this was our first one.
Okay, great. And then there's a follow-up question here. Question about volume. How many service calls is ServiceMax processing every day for SPP? How many part numbers are in the system? Maybe you could just speak in general to the type and the amount of data that is moving through the system.
Yeah, so we've got part numbers, about 120,000 part numbers, and service calls we're probably doing around 60 a day, I would suggest, around that at the moment. I mean with Jitterbit and ServiceMax, it's increased that since that was another benefit, obviously, but it's managed to increase our run rate in terms of service calls. But I imagine we're running at about 60 to 70 a day.
Great, thank you. Corey, this question is directed towards you. Can you talk a little bit about SAP custom fields and records and how we handle those?
Sure. You know, the thing to keep in mind when we're working with SAP in particular, SAP, we integrate through BAPIs, RFCs, and IDOCs. And so if you can expose something in a BAPI, RFC, or IDOC, even if it is a custom field, we can integrate with that. So hopefully that answers the question there.
Yep, great. Thanks, Corey. Let's see here. Another question. Let me throw this one out to both Damien and Randy. So maybe start with Damien. What was the hardest part of the implementation? What was the biggest challenge in rolling this out?
In terms of the overall solution, it was the change of sort of mentality, I suppose. I mean, the technology helped us no end, but we'd been on the same system for 20 years, to be honest. So that was our biggest challenge. We'd had guys that had never we found it amazing, but some of these guys had been with the company 40 years and never even had a computer at home. So we had to teach them how to use an iPad in the first instance. So that was probably our biggest challenge. But once they got into that in terms of the process, and we were quite hot on the training aspect in terms of making sure that they were fully aware of their responsibilities as a field service technician, because if they failed to enter the hours that worked on a job, then that data wouldn't flow back through into ServiceMax and then using Jitterbit into SAP, which meant we couldn't invoice. So there were quite a few responsibilities, and it was just making sure that those processes were fully aware of their responsibilities in that process as part of our training plan, really.
Sure, that makes sense. Randy, let me turn the question to you as far as what do you see as the common sort of challenges, if there are any, really, in rolling out something like this to other customers? Do you hear anything in common there? Is it similar to what Damien said?
Yeah, I think it is very similar. I think, and we talked about this a little bit earlier, which is, not trying to do too much too fast, because, Damien's situation is very common that we see with a lot of our other customers, where they're going from a very paper manual-based process, and it's a pretty big leap forward when you go from paper to handing field technicians an iPad as the device that they're going to be using. And so you don't want to try to implement too much of a new process too quickly. So again, kind of starting things off at a pretty simple level to make it easier for people in the field who are using the applications. You want to get adoption and acceptance kind of in place, and then kind of build from there.
Got it. Yeah, makes sense. Let's see here. Damien, another question for you. You mentioned during the presentation that you felt that you were now able to invoice 10 times faster, but we have a follow-up question here that's asking, how are you measuring financial ROI? Are you seeing increased revenues, or what are you really seeing as the business return from implementing both ServiceMax and Jitterbit?
Cash collection, really, I suppose. We're same as any business. I mean, cash is obviously cash is king, is the statement these days, and especially in our business because of the environment they work in. Not so much in the field service division, but as a business, we are very careful on cash flow, and that's really because if you think of an oil and gas project, just going off kilter slightly, but for instance, that could be a £4 million job to us with a £1 million engine from Caterpillar, for instance. We have to buy that up front, and we don't get paid until we ship the product. So yeah, there's staged payments, but in terms of cash collection, it was key for us, because it means that whereas before we would wait 10 days to get that invoice into the post or whatever, we could literally same day, the service coordinator, once the job is closed and completed, and we had the customer signature through the iPad, obviously back into the ServiceMax system, we could then close off the service order in SAP and an invoice. So literally same day, and they could go out in the post, and that means we're potentially collecting that cash 10 days faster than what we were before.
That's great. Okay. Well, hey, let me continue on here. We got questions rolling in. Let me take this next one. So what type of presence does Jitterbit have with Microsoft-centric environments, CRM, ERP, etc. I'll just make the quick statement that we talked about connectors up front in the presentation. We also do have connectors for the Microsoft Dynamics suite of products. So that is all the ERP systems, GP, AX, SL, and Navision, as well as CRM. So Jitterbit is well versed in connecting with Microsoft products and certainly could very easily connect their flavor of ERP with ServiceMax. Let me follow that up with another question. Corey, let me direct this one to you. There's some questions here around, is it possible to set up alerts for when something is successful or in the rare case where something goes wrong?
Yeah, it's a great question, and absolutely you can set up real-time alerts. It is as simple as right-clicking on an operation and saying, yeah, if this fails, we want to trigger off an email. You can make those emails very dynamic, bring in dynamic parameters. You can include the error message, or you could do that according to a business logic. It doesn't necessarily even have to be on success or failure. But yes, it can do the alerts, and you could also build in your own logical error handling.
Perfect.
Can I just jump in there? We actually use that. So we actually do that. So we have reports that are created either on the fly or every morning a guy will come in and we can run reports on work orders that have been created from ServiceMax which have not been put through to SAP for any reason, and we can report on all those errors. It could be a credit check failure on the customer. It could be other things that the service coordinator hasn't filled in properly on the work order in ServiceMax, which is why it's fair. But we can, and we do that regularly.
That's great. Thank you for jumping in there, Damien. Let me follow up, Damien, on something you said earlier as well when we were talking about volumes and the number of parts and other data items that you're processing. But let me turn it to Corey because we have a question here about how we deal with large volumes of data in Jitterbit. So maybe you could speak a little bit to how data chunking works and maybe specifically how we work with the Salesforce API.
Absolutely. The Salesforce API, when you're doing write functions into the standard API, you're limited to 200 records at a time. A lot of people don't realize that. But the Salesforce API does limit you down to 200 records per API call. And so what we've done in Jitterbit is we have made that very transparent. We do what we call data chunking, where if you have, say, 10,000 records that you're sending in through that API, we're going to separate that into chunks of 200 records. And then we're going to multi-thread those requests up to Salesforce to improve the performance even more. And so we take care of that, but then we also do have a connector built in for the Salesforce bulk API where you can do up to, I believe it's 10,000 or 20,000, I don't recall exactly, but you can do a much larger amount. And we support that bulk volume API as well. And so we can do millions of records in bulk in a matter of minutes. If you're doing standard APIs with advanced transformations, you can still do millions in less than an hour.
Great. Thank you, Corey. Let's see here. Damien, let me throw another question out to you. How much did you deviate from the out-of-the-box version of ServiceMax?
We tried not to. So we were very strict on. We wanted to stay as out of the box as we could. We changed a few things in terms of our particular business process in terms of obviously the service order and sales order, which is obviously an SAP part, but where that comes back from SAP into ServiceMax. But other than that, we changed a bit around the iPad app in terms of our process. For instance, we wanted our field service engineers to create quotes in the field. So if they would go to a site and they would if they were going to repair a pump, for instance, but they saw another pump even from another manufacturer, which we also could service, they would then potentially create some workflow on their app, which would then feed that straight back through to a new business coordinator in the office to say, right, okay, I've done that job, but there also is another pump from another competitor on site, and that hasn't been serviced for 2 years, so that gives us a business development opportunity. So we tweaked it a bit, but tried not to change it too much, really.
Okay. Hey, Randy, let me turn that question to you just as a wider ServiceMax question. I'm sure you have plenty of customers that are doing out of the box, but you probably have quite a few, and I think that sounds like a value that you can really kind of make ServiceMax fit your business. Maybe tell us a little bit about what you see as some of the trends within your customer base.
Yeah, I think that I think that one of the things that we're able to offer is we have a variety of kind of packaged implementation options, so that rather than having clients have to worry about figuring out every possible way to implement ServiceMax, we kind of have a packaged approach to this, so it becomes a lot more standard, so you can get up and running quicker. It's a much more cost-efficient way of also implementing the application, because it's a little bit more of a predefined template. I wanted to add on a little bit to Damien's comment, because I think it's great that you guys have implemented that capability for kind of feeding information back to your business development or your marketing team, because that's one of the things that we're seeing more and more from our clients, is that the field service folks are out on client sites and they have access to information that is relevant and important to other parts of the organization. And so we've actually have more and more of our customers who are adding some kind of capability to the ServiceMax application to either trigger some type of an opportunity within their CRM or whatever other back office system that they have to track competitive information or potential product leads and that type of thing. So I think that has become kind of a common thing that we're seeing. One of the other things is that as we get more customer experience around things that are potentially customer-specific configurations, we build those things into our standard product over time, so that it becomes something that's just a standard part of the solution going forward.
Very cool. Okay, so let me keep this moving here as we have more questions rolling in. Damien, let me throw another question out to you. You talked about, and actually Randy, you as well talked about sort of not trying to boil the ocean with your first implementation, and it does sound like, Damien, you're planning to roll integration out to other parts of field service. So maybe you could speak a little bit about that. And then the other question here is, beyond field service, now that you've got integration in place, are you looking to roll it out to other applications in the org?
Yeah, I can. Yeah. So our first phase was field service. So the next real part of into the ServiceMax development would be depot repair is one area that we're looking at. So we obviously have field service, but then obviously we have returns back to depots, and we've got 4 of those in the UK, and we've got 8 around the globe. So it's the process then. Different type of work order, I suppose, which is what it would be. So that's the next ServiceMax sort of development that we are looking to potentially go towards. So where we have guys in a depot and knowing what comes in, what product it is, pulling that from the product table in SAP, and then obviously quoting that stuff in ServiceMax, and that would then piggyback onto the same sort of integration that we've currently used Jitterbit for. So that's the ServiceMax side, but on top of that, in terms of other products outside of that arena, so obviously we've just started the CRM Salesforce rollout, so it's likely that obviously Jitterbit, because of the investment we've made in Jitterbit, will be our integration partner for Salesforce integration. And then on top of that, again, we have a cloud-based pump selection tool. So at the moment, that's run obviously in the cloud, and it allows our sales guys and distributors and customers to spec their own pumps in a cloud-based solution. But what we're really looking to use Jitterbit for is to then take those technical quotations of what pump and to what customer, and pull that straight through and automatically create the sales order in SAP. So that's really where we're looking to take Jitterbit outside of the whole Force.com platform, is to take it to that level where we can have a distributor in Singapore. He creates a pump quotation using this product, which is in the cloud, which is a very very pump-specific technical program, but he can, at a click of a button, then send that through to our SAP system, and using Jitterbit would automatically create the sales order. So that's really the sort of three sort of next developments utilising Jitterbit, and some with ServiceMax and some with not.
Great. Hey, so let me ask you a follow-up question, and this is worded in a bit of a loaded way, but does it get easier to roll out integration for your phase 2, phase 3, and so on once you've got that first one under your belt?
Well, I think it does, yeah, because we obviously we evaluated a couple of other integration ways of doing it, using CSV files and using other solutions, but we're quite a small team, so we've got quite a small IT team, so we rely quite heavily on Jitterbit themselves to help us do the initial integration and implementation. But I think because of the way it looks into the SAP BAPIs and the knowledge that we've got from Jitterbit and the training, we've managed to we're hoping that it should be a lot easier, especially from the Salesforce side, because obviously we're already integrated into the Force platform. Slightly more tricky when we come to do the other solution, because obviously we don't really know too much about the cloud-based solution in terms of getting data out, but getting that data from Jitterbit into SAP, we feel that our internal team are quite confident that they can do it themselves.
That's great. Okay, we've got 2 minutes left here before the top of the hour and a bunch more questions. Let me just comment that if we don't get to all of your questions here today, which it doesn't look like we're going to have time for, we will follow up with you offline after the webinar. So we will make sure we get all the questions answered, and we're happy to pull in Damien and Randy and Corey as required to answer any of these questions. But let me throw a couple more out there before we finish. Corey, there's some product questions here that I'll throw your way. Actually, there's two here. Let me ask you the first one, which is there's a question here about storing data in the cloud. And I guess the question more is, as we are integrating through the cloud, what type of data, if any, is actually stored on the Jitterbit side?
Yeah, it's a great question, and one of the things to always keep in mind with Jitterbit Harmony, it is a cloud platform, and we give you the option to run your integrations completely in the cloud if you're doing cloud-to-cloud integration. But none of your data persists in the cloud. It's all transient data. If you're sending data, say, from the Salesforce to SAP, it makes its way through and it does not persist. We do not store your data.
Great answer. Thank you. And then the last question here, Corey, and I think you showed some of this in the demo, but is it possible, and I guess the answer is yes, but perhaps you could speak a little to how we chain operations together to create some more complex workflows so that when one thing completes, it may fire off another operation.
Yeah, it's as simple as a right-click on an operation, and you say, okay, after this one's done, I want to trigger the second one. And after that one, I want to trigger a third, and then maybe a fourth, and however complex that you want to get. You can do those based upon success. You can do them based upon failure. Or if you want to, you can apply your own business logic and trigger your operations based upon really any criteria that you set.
That's great. Yeah, and I would just add to that, I think we talked about this early on, but you can run an operation on a schedule, and Corey, you were just sort of referencing the fact that you can also trigger an operation to run. So when something changes, as an example, in Salesforce on the ServiceMax side, you can actually kick off an operation to run immediately when Jitterbit recognizes that change. So that's another powerful feature of the product. Okay, guys, we are at the top of the hour. Let me first start by thanking all of our panelists. Randy, Damien, Corey, great job today. I think we answered some good questions, good demo, great case study, good information on ServiceMax. I know at least I was highly entertained, so thank you very much. And then to the audience, thank you for joining us today. We had a great turnout. Like I said, those questions we didn't get answered, we will follow up with you. And if you do have other questions about Jitterbit, ServiceMax, or anything else, please feel free to reach out to any one of us, and we will be sure to get you an answer. So let me just open it up to the rest of the panel here right at the end just to see if we missed anything or anyone wants to say one last word here.
Nothing for me.
Thanks, Dan, and thanks, Damien and Corey. Great job, you guys. Thanks for sharing this information with the folks who joined the webinar today.
Thank you.
All right, guys. Thank you very much. Everyone have a great day.